The world you're about to imagine is quiet, gentle, and softened by the crackling warmth of an imaginary campfire. And as you listen, you may begin to feel your shoulders loosen and your eyes grow heavier, because tonight we are drifting into a calm journey across an ancient frozen world. Before we wander too far into the cold silence, may I ask, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? If you enjoy peaceful history like this, you're welcome to tap like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It truly helps others find these relaxing stories too. Imagine now a vast landscape where snow lies in endless layers, not in a frightening way, but in a soft, muted calm. The air is steady, the horizon pale, and the world feels slowed down, as if every sound is wrapped in a thick blanket. This is the beginning of our quiet walk across an ice age morning. Out here, the wind moves steadily, yet never rushes. It brushes across the land like someone gently smoothing a sheet across a bed. Ancient travelers once stepped across this same frozen ground with patience, careful footsteps, and simple hopes for warmth and safety. If at any moment you feel yourself drifting a little deeper into relaxation, that's perfectly fine. This story is meant to settle your thoughts and slow your breathing. Let's keep walking, gently. The sky above this world glows faintly, not bright, but soft, like a pale silver wash. Sunlight doesn't pierce the air. It glides. It rests on icy plains, making the snow shimmer in delicate shades of blue. Nothing is hurried. Nothing demands attention. In this quiet world, the snow absorbs nearly every sound. Even your footsteps feel muted, like pressing into soft, fresh powder. It creates a kind of floating silence that invites your mind to slow down, moment by moment. And as we move forward, here's a little reminder to stay comfortable. Adjust your blanket or pillow if you need to. We are in no rush here. Our pace remains gentle. Ahead of us, low hills rise slowly, shaped by wind over centuries. These shapes weren't carved by magic or mystery, but simply by the natural forces created by the one who controls all creation. The hills stretch across the land like frozen waves, each curve inviting, unhurried. Ancient tribes once crossed these slopes with a sense of routine. Their paths weren't dramatic journeys. They were necessary steps through a world that demanded patience. Every morning, they woke to the same pale light, the same frosted air, and the same quiet resolve to keep moving. You might notice, as we picture this together, how the mind softens when imagining such a slow, rhythmic world. A place without rush, without noise, where each breath forms a gentle cloud in the cold air. Far in the distance, the faint outline of a frozen river begins to appear. Its surface is smooth, reflecting the soft sky above it like a long, icy mirror. For ancient travelers, this wasn't a danger. It was a path, a natural road shaped by the cold season. Take a moment to settle your breathing again, letting the rhythm of this frozen world guide you to a calmer state. Your comfort matters most right now. As we step closer to the frozen river, the air seems even quieter. The world around you holds a peaceful stillness, as though it's paused between breaths. Snow drifts collect gently along the riverbanks, forming soft curves that look untouched for ages. And in this hush, we begin to understand how ancient tribes saw the Ice Age world, not as a hostile realm, but as a vast, silent landscape that simply required respect, caution, and steady movement. This is where their journey began, and where ours continues. As we continue along the frozen river, imagine the faint crunch beneath your feet becoming softer with each step, as if the snow itself is welcoming you deeper into its quiet world. The cold air doesn't bite. It simply sits gently against the skin, reminding you of stillness. For ancient tribes, this slow movement across icy pathways was part of daily life, a routine shaped not by force but by steady patience. And as you picture this, allow your breathing to fall into an easy rhythm, like footsteps across the snow. Sometimes, distant mountains appeared on the horizon, massive shapes softened by layers of ice and time. These mountains didn't rise sharply. They sloped gradually, almost politely, blending into the pale sky. Tribes used these shapes as silent markers, guiding them through endless white landscapes. Nothing rushed them. and nothing pulled them forward except the simple need to find safer ground. As you visualize those distant forms, let your mind settle gently, the way snow settles on untouched slopes. Here's a small reminder to readjust your body if you need to. Move your blanket, loosen your shoulders, or rest your head more comfortably. The ancient world didn't demand strict attention, and neither does this moment. In the Ice Age, survival often depended on calm awareness, noticing the land without fear, without hurry. Travelers walked with steady breaths, steady thoughts, steady hearts. And as you listen, you may begin to feel the same quiet steadiness forming within you. As the tribes moved onward, the snow occasionally lifted in soft spirals, carried by passing winds. These winds weren't storms. They were delicate breezes that shaped tiny patterns across the ice. People learned to read these small signs: the direction of the wind, the texture of the snow, the shadows cast by clouds. All these details told them how far they had come and how far they still needed to go. Their knowledge wasn't mystical. It was patient observation taught through experience across generations. Deeper into the landscape, the terrain shifted into rolling plains where the ground felt firm beneath layers of snow. These plains seemed endless, stretching so far that the horizon blended into a single thin line. Traveling through such open areas required mental calmness. There was no shelter, no immediate cover, only trust in the path ahead and the care of the one who controls all conditions. For modern listeners like you, these open plains can feel like a mental clearing, wide, quiet, and uncluttered. Every few hours, ancient travelers paused to rest, gathering in simple circles to regain warmth and energy. Picture them forming temporary camps, using basic materials, placing stones, snow, or hides around small fires that offered comfort. The warmth of the flames wasn't magic. It was a means created by Allah to provide relief. These resting moments were essential, gentle pauses in the rhythm of survival. Imagine that same calm pause settling into your mind right now, giving you permission to slow down. As night approached, the Ice Age sky transformed into a soft dome of quiet darkness. Stars glimmered faintly, their light filtered through thin air. Nights were colder, yes, but also more peaceful. With the land silent and the wind settling, tribes often slept close together, sharing warmth and keeping watch in turns. In this moment, imagine lying beneath that ancient sky, feeling the soft glow of starlight and the comforting quiet of a night with no urgency. Another gentle reminder: if your eyelids feel heavier, that's perfectly natural. The slow rhythm of this frozen world encourages rest. And as you listen, imagine the ancient families settling into their shelters, wrapped in furs and hides, whispering softly before sleep. These nightly rituals grounded their spirits, preparing them for the next day's slow journey across frozen ground. When morning returned, a soft layer of frost covered everything, creating a delicate shine across the plains. It wasn't harsh. It was beautiful, like a quiet refresh. Travelers rose slowly, stretching, breathing deeply in the chilly air. The cold carried clarity, and each day began with simple purpose. As you imagine this calm dawn, allow the same clarity to settle gently in your mind, without pressure or expectation. Not all days were bright. Sometimes thick clouds blanketed the sky, softening the light even more. But these grey days weren't gloomy. They brought stillness, making the landscape even quieter. Sound barely travelled, and the world felt wrapped in a soft cocoon. Picture yourself standing there, breath slow, mind unhurried, wrapped in the comfort of cold air that asks nothing of you. As the tribes continued forward, they relied on memory, instinct, and the signs placed in the world around them. They watched animal tracks, shifting patterns in ice, and the curve of distant hills. This wasn't dramatic exploration. It was gentle movement shaped by awareness. Every day looked similar, every step a continuation of the last. And this repetition brought comfort, a rhythm you might feel forming as well. Occasionally, the group encountered frozen forests, trees dusted with layers of white, branches bending slightly under the weight of frost. These forests weren't dangerous. They were sheltered corridors where the wind softened and the air felt still. Walking through them offered moments of quiet protection. Imagine moving through such a forest now, each step cushioned, each breath steady. Here's one more soft reminder to ease into your posture. Let your neck relax, let your hands rest, let your breath slow. This story doesn't need your full focus, only your presence. Just like ancient travelers didn't force their journeys, you don't need to force your attention. Let the calm settle naturally. Finally, as we return to the vast open plains, picture once more the endless white stretching ahead. The snow reflects gentle light, the wind settles, and everything feels balanced. The ancient world moves slowly, patiently, without sharp edges. And as you stand in that quiet space, imagining the world covered in ice, you may feel the same soft stillness settle into your thoughts. Nothing rushes. Nothing demands. The journey simply continues, softly, into the distance. The first thing you might notice as we shift into this next part of our journey is the gentle trail leading forward, an unbroken line of footprints pressed into soft, untouched snow. These prints are quiet reminders of the earliest travelers who walked long before us, moving slowly and steadily across a world shaped by cold winds and silence. And as you picture these footprints stretching into the distance, you might feel a soft calm begin to settle over you, like the hush that follows freshly fallen snow. Each footprint tells a small story. Some are deep and firm, belonging to adults carrying supplies across the frozen land. Others are lighter, almost delicate, left by younger members of the group learning how to walk on soft snow without sinking too deep. These patterns form a gentle rhythm: step, shift, breathe, repeated with patient consistency. Imagine watching these early travelers as they move quietly, their breath forming small clouds in the cool morning air. As we walk alongside these imagined travelers, here's a quiet reminder to adjust your position if needed. Let your shoulders soften and your breathing slow. Much like the people of the Ice Age, you don't need to rush anything here. Their journeys were steady, unhurried, shaped by calm decisions and careful observation. Every step mattered, and yet no step was taken in haste. The landscape around these travelers was often wide and open, covered in a smooth blanket of white. With little vegetation in sight, the only signs of life were the tracks left behind: footprints of humans, trails of animals, and faint lines drawn by simple sleds being pulled across the snow. These marks on the landscape acted as quiet reminders of the path forward and the path left behind. They created a kind of map drawn directly onto the surface of the earth. Some mornings, the ground felt firm beneath the snow, allowing travelers to walk with ease. Other days, the snow softened, causing each step to sink slightly, gentle resistance that required patience and balance. Yet through it all, the early travelers remained calm, accepting the land as it was. They understood that the cold world they crossed belonged fully to the one who shaped it, and their role was simply to move with care. With every few steps, the group paused to check their surroundings. They watched the wind patterns, studied the shape of distant hills, and listened to the faint cracks of shifting ice. These sounds were never alarming. They were simply signals from the world around them, guiding their progress. Imagine how peaceful it must have felt to move through a landscape where even the smallest sound carried meaning. Closer to the ground, snowflakes clung to clothing and hair, sparkling under the muted daylight. These tiny flakes were not obstacles. They were reminders of the delicate beauty that existed even in harsh environments. As the travelers breathed, the air felt crisp and clean. And as you imagine this scene, let your own breath flow naturally, steady and soft. Sometimes, the group traveled in single file, one person stepping in the exact footprints of the one before them. This simple technique saved energy and made the journey easier. Each footprint became a guide for the next person, creating a shared path through deep snow. The rhythm of their movement, step into step, breath into breath, created a calm, almost meditative flow. Here's another gentle reminder: if your body feels heavier or more relaxed, let that feeling grow. The steady pace of this journey invites stillness. There's nothing to solve and nothing to prepare for. Just movement through a quiet world long gone, leaving only the soft idea of peace behind. As we observe the trail ahead, we notice footprints that curve slightly around natural obstacles, small ridges of ice, wind-shaped drifts, patches of hardened snow. These tiny adjustments show how adaptable ancient travelers were, adjusting their route with ease rather than forcing their way through. Their calm acceptance of the land's shape allowed them to conserve energy and remain safe. Farther along, the footprints occasionally spread out, forming wider patterns as scouts moved ahead to check the territory. These scouts carried no special tools, only their awareness, experience, and trust in the natural signs around them. Their steps were careful, deliberate, and deeply focused. They looked for safe crossings, water sources, and any signs of large animals moving nearby. Meanwhile, those who followed walked with quiet confidence, knowing that the path ahead had already been gently tested. This created a sense of shared safety. Every footprint connected one person to another, forming a long, living chain across the snow. As you picture this, imagine how comforting it must have felt to walk in a group that relied so fully on one another. The morning light shifted slowly as the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the snow. These shadows stretched and swayed with each step, creating soft shapes that moved in harmony with the travelers. The world around them glowed with a quiet beauty, no harsh brightness, only a gentle shine that made everything feel calm and balanced. Another soft reminder to relax your hands and jaw if they're tense. Let the slow movement of this imagined journey guide your breathing. In the Ice Age, calmness wasn't optional, it was essential. And that same slow calm can settle into you now, like a blanket laid gently across your thoughts. As the group continued on, the footprints behind them slowly filled with drifting snow. Not quickly, just gradually, as the wind brushed light powder across the trail. The world didn't erase their presence harshly, it softened it, blending their path back into the landscape. And with each softened print, the land whispered the same simple message: keep moving steadily, keep breathing, keep going. As we follow the trail deeper into the landscape, the footprints begin to tell more subtle stories. Some prints spread a little wider, showing where someone paused to look around, perhaps adjusting the load they carried. Others overlap, where two travelers briefly walk side by side, exchanging quiet words carried away by the cold air. These small details remind us that their journey was not just movement, it was companionship, shared effort, and patient understanding. As you picture these prints, you might feel your mind drifting into the same gentle rhythm. Beyond the plain, the travelers approached areas where fresh snowfall had covered earlier trails. Here, each step left a crisp, new imprint, perfectly shaped and sharply defined. This fresh layer of snow softened every sound, making the world feel almost weightless. The travelers walked slowly to conserve energy, each step deliberate, each breath steady. Imagine this same quiet settling into your thoughts, dissolving any rush or tension from the day. Occasionally, the group encountered faint tracks left by animals moving through the night, small rounded prints of foxes, deeper patches from larger creatures, and delicate trails from birds hopping along the snow surface. These signs helped the group understand their surroundings without fear. They read the land as one might read simple instructions, noticing patterns that guided their movement. In the stillness, every track felt like a whisper from the world, offering gentle direction. The terrain often shifted beneath their feet, from soft powder to firmer ice. When the ground hardened, their footprints became shallower, almost as if the land wanted to preserve their energy. On these stretches, the group moved with a slightly quicker rhythm, not hurried, but efficient. If you listen closely to the flow of this moment, you might feel your own thoughts adopting that same balanced pace. Calm, steady, unforced. Sometimes, the footprints veered slightly toward clusters of ancient shrubs or frozen brush. These small patches offered tiny moments of shelter from the wind. Travelers paused there briefly, letting the breeze pass before continuing on. These pauses weren't dramatic rest stops. They were gentle breaks that respected the environment and their limited strength. Imagine taking a similar pause internally, just a quiet space to soften your mind. As afternoon light stretched across the land, the footprints cast soft shadows that made each indentation look deeper and more textured. The shadows curled along the edges of each print, giving them a delicate glow. The travelers might not have noticed this beauty directly. They were focused on safety, but the world around them still offered this silent artistry. And you, listening now, can enjoy that calm imagery without needing to do anything at all. Here's another soft reminder to settle into your position. Let your arms rest. Let your breath even out. Just like the travelers adjusted their pace when needed, you can adjust your comfort freely, without hurry. This journey invites rest, not attention. Moving farther along, the footprints approached a gentle rise in the land, just a small hill, barely noticeable except for how it changed the pattern of steps. Footprints became closer together on the ascent, wider apart on the descent, forming a natural rhythm that matched the slope. This simple pattern reflects the patient adaptability of ancient travelers. They responded to the land's shape with quiet acceptance, never forcing a faster pace than the world allowed. At the top of the rise, the group would pause to observe the landscape. The leader might squat down, pressing fingers gently into the snow to feel its texture, whether it was crusted from the night's freeze or soft from drifting flakes. Other members waited silently, trusting these small assessments to guide the safest path. Picture the calm unity in this moment, the shared breath, the steady gaze across the frozen open ground. As they continued on, the footprints began to form a long arc toward the shelter of distant hills. This curve was intentional, avoiding low areas where snow tended to accumulate deeper. It reflects the travelers' growing familiarity with their surroundings, knowledge earned through slow, steady experience. Imagine following this arc with your eyes, feeling its gentle movement pull you into a deeper sense of quiet. The closer they came to the hills, the more the wind softened, blocked gently by the rising land. Footprints here pressed into smoother snow, more protected from drifting. The group's movement became easier, the steps more evenly spaced. This portion of the journey likely felt comforting to them, a small relief after miles of open plains. Allow that sense of small relief to reach you as well, a subtle loosening of whatever weight you carried today. As evening approached, the footprints gathered closer together, showing where the group slowed their pace. They were looking for a suitable place to rest, somewhere level, somewhere calm. The prints became heavier at the end of the trail, pressed deeply into the snow, reflecting the fatigue of the day. Yet even in tired steps, there was purpose and quiet strength. Imagine that strength now, not as force, but as steady patience. Soon, the travelers stopped entirely. The final prints stood in a small cluster, forming a silent circle. Here, they would prepare for the night, setting simple shelters, arranging their tools, and warming their hands near a small fire whose comfort was granted by Allah's will. Their circle of footprints marked the end of a long day, a quiet pause in the endless white. As night settled in, snowflakes began to drift lightly, covering the footprints with delicate layers. One by one, the deep impressions softened, losing their sharp edges. By morning, some would still be visible, and some would fade. But their presence, even briefly, told the story of movement, of steady survival, of calm perseverance across a frozen world. And as you imagine those footprints fading into the night, allow your own thoughts to soften in the same way, quiet, slow, peaceful, ready for the next calm chapter of this journey. The world of the Ice Age may seem harsh from a distance, but when you step closer, slowly, gently, you begin to notice how full it was of subtle signs. Every shift of the wind, every shape in the snow, every distant sound served as a quiet guide. And as we begin this new segment, imagine yourself sinking deeper into calm, like settling into a warm blanket while a soft fire crackles somewhere nearby. The land is large, the silence wide, and yet every detail carries meaning. To the early travelers, the land was not loud or overwhelming. It was soft-spoken, offering clues with patience. The slope of a hill might suggest the direction of a safe passage. The way snow formed around a boulder might reveal which winds had passed through in the night. These signs weren't dramatic. They were simple, steady indicators, pieces of information placed throughout the world by the one who controls all creation. Travelers learned to observe them quietly, without rushing. As you picture this, here's a gentle reminder to settle yourself again. Adjust your blanket, ease your breathing, or shift your posture slightly. Just as ancient groups read their surroundings with care, you can read your own comfort in this moment. There is no urgency, only slow understanding. The sky also offered direction. On clear mornings, the pale light revealed distant silhouettes of mountains, letting travelers know which areas might be safer or more sheltered. On cloudy days, the even grey across the horizon helped them recognize where storms might be forming. They didn't fear these signs, they simply acknowledged them as part of the journey. Their relationship with nature was patient and observant. Sometimes, the land spoke through sound. Not speech, not warning, just soft indicators. A faint cracking of distant ice might mean a frozen river was shifting. The subtle rustle of wind brushing low shrubs might hint at a change in weather. Even silence held meaning. A completely still landscape suggested stable conditions, safe for travel. Imagine listening to such a world, when nothing is rushed and every sound is spaced gently apart. Up close, the snow itself revealed countless clues. Its texture changed with temperature, humidity, and wind direction. A crusted surface meant the night had been cold and still. Powdery snow suggested recent winds. Layers beneath the top could tell travelers how long the snow had been there. These tiny details served as a quiet map, one that required calm minds to interpret. Here's another soft reminder. Feel free to let your eyes grow heavier if they want to. Your breathing can slow with the story. The travelers weren't hurried, and neither are you. Let the calm settle where you need it most. The behavior of animals also provided guidance. Herd movements showed where food sources might lie. Tracks in the snow revealed safe routes or areas recently traveled. Even the absence of tracks told a story. Perhaps that area was unsafe, or perhaps simply untouched. The early tribes didn't rely on inventions or tools for navigation. They relied on attentiveness. They watched, listened, and understood the land's quiet language. Cloud formations were another gentle indicator. A thin veil of high clouds signaled steady weather, while low, thick clouds hinted that heavy snow might come later. Travelers didn't panic at these signs. They simply adjusted their plans. If needed, they slowed down or stayed near natural shelter. Their strength wasn't in force, it was in patience and understanding. As midday approached, shadows shortened across the frozen ground. These shifting shadows helped travelers gauge time without watches or instruments. The sun's position told them when to pause for rest, when to continue, and when to prepare for evening. The light changed slowly, casting long shapes that moved in harmony with the land. Imagine watching those moving shadows, letting them soothe your mind like a slow, gentle pulse. Sometimes, the land signs were very small, barely noticeable unless observed closely. The slight tilt of snow against a fallen branch, the faint sparkle of frost in only one direction, or the way a breeze circled a hill before fading. These tiny details helped travelers choose paths that were smoother, safer, or calmer. They didn't need absolute certainty. They trusted the subtle guidance available to them. Here's a small reminder to relax the muscles in your face, especially around your eyes and jaw. Let the calm landscape we're imagining ease these areas. The early travelers survived by staying aware yet relaxed, never tightening themselves against the world. You can mirror that softness now. When the wind changed direction, it told travelers more than just temperature. It revealed the shape of distant landforms, because wind flows differently around hills, ridges, and valleys. They felt these changes on their skin, in their clothing, even in the way sound traveled. This sensitivity wasn't mystical. It was learned, practiced through years of observing the world with patience. In landscapes where everything seemed similar, endless snow, pale skies, long plains, the natural signs served as gentle markers. A cluster of stones might stand out, a frozen lake might create a broad reflective surface, and low shrubs might show a faint line pointing towards safer terrain. Every feature, no matter how small, held value. Nothing was ignored. And as we near the end of this part, imagine yourself standing where they once stood, surrounded by quiet, wrapped in soft cold air, reading a world that speaks not through shouting but through subtle, peaceful signals. Let that quiet understanding settle inside you too, steady, calm, and unhurried. As the travelers continued across the open land, they learned to sense temperature shifts even before they fully arrived. A gentle rise in coldness often meant they were approaching shaded areas or regions where the wind funneled through valleys. A slight warmth hinted at sheltered pockets where the sun touched the ground more easily. These clues weren't dramatic, just subtle sensations on the skin, reminders that the land was full of quiet signals. And as you imagine these travelers moving forward, you might feel yourself settling more deeply into relaxation, mirroring their calm awareness. Sometimes the sky offered signs even without clouds. A faint halo around the sun suggested ice crystals drifting far above, often indicating colder hours ahead. Travelers took such changes into account, not with fear, but with simple acceptance. These halos, soft and delicate, gently wrap the sun in pale rings, turning the sky into a muted painting. Imagine looking up at such a sky, the color soft, the air still, the feeling peaceful and unhurried. The land surface also shifted in texture from place to place. Toward frozen lakes, the snow thinned, forming a smooth layer that reflected light in a subdued sparkle. Near rocky outcrops, the snow deepened, collecting in pockets protected from the wind. The travelers knew these patterns well. They stepped lightly on thin layers, spreading their weight, and walked confidently across deeper snow where it offered more grip. Their knowledge wasn't about conquering nature, it was about moving with it. Here's a gentle reminder to check your breathing again. Let each inhale arrive slowly, and each exhale leave without effort. Just like the early travelers adjusted their steps according to the ground beneath them, you can adjust your thoughts gently, letting them soften and rest as needed. There's no urgency here, only calm, steady presence. When the wind carried scents, faint hints of distant plants, animals, or melting ice, the travelers paid attention. Even the slightest fragrance drifting across the snow meant something. A trace of plant life suggested a sheltered area where the wind didn't reach strongly. A hint of animal presence meant resources nearby or movement worth noting. These scents traveled gently, carried by air shaped by the will of Allah, who designed the world with balance and purpose. In valleys, the natural signs grew stronger. Wind patterns changed noticeably, curling around slopes before fading. Echoes traveled farther, allowing travelers to hear distant sounds, cracking ice, footsteps, or animal calls. Each echo carried its own information, teaching them about their surroundings. Imagine standing in one of these valleys, sound weaving softly through the air, each note arriving with space between, calming and steady. During long journeys, the travelers often followed patterns in the snow left by the wind. These patterns, sometimes called sastrugi, soft ridges carved naturally, aligned in the direction of prevailing winds. The travelers used them like arrows, reading their shapes to understand where storms had passed and which way the winds usually flowed. It was a quiet, reliable guide written directly onto the land. Later in the day, as the sun lowered, the world shifted in color. Pale blues deepened into muted shades of lavender and gray. These changes signaled the approach of colder hours. Travelers often slowed their pace, not out of fear, but from respect for the growing chill. The light dimmed softly, giving the land a peaceful glow. Let that same softening flow through your thoughts as evening settles in this imagined journey. Sometimes snowflakes drifted gently from the sky, not in storms but in quiet, graceful descents. Each flake landed silently, layering over the land with care. The travelers watched how the flakes fell, whether they drifted sideways, downward, or swirled in small circles. These patterns revealed wind direction, upcoming shifts, or nearby shelters. In this soft snowfall, time seemed to slow, offering reassuring stillness. Here's another reminder to relax your posture. Let your back rest, let your neck release, let your breath move easily. Just as the travelers observed snowflakes with calm patience, you can observe your own state without judgment, simply noticing, simply softening. As night approached, the horizon began to blur where land met sky. In this fading light, the silhouettes of distant hills became essential markers. Their outlines helped travelers decide whether to continue a little farther or stop for the evening. The land didn't demand speed. It simply offered choices, each one quiet and reasonable. As you imagine looking at that fading horizon, allow your thoughts to blur slightly too, softening sharp edges. The world grew quieter as the last light slipped away. Sound changed in these hours, becoming more focused, more contained. Travelers listened closely for anything unusual, but mostly they heard wind settling, snow shifting gently, and their own breathing. In this deepening calm, every natural sign became more meaningful. Finally, when the first stars appeared, tiny and steady in the cold sky, they also served as peaceful guides. Not for navigation in this moment, but as gentle markers of time passing. Their presence signaled that the day's reading of the land was complete. The travelers had interpreted the signs, followed the clues, and moved safely across the frozen world once more. And as we close this segment, imagine standing with them beneath that quiet sky, listening, watching, breathing, surrounded by signs that speak softly, guiding the heart toward rest and ease. Whenever you're ready, we can continue to segment 4. When ancient travelers reached a frozen river, it must have felt like stepping onto a long, silent road created naturally through the land. Unlike deep snow that resisted every step, these icy surfaces offered a smooth path forward, a gentle invitation to move with ease. And as you imagine standing at the edge of such a river, with the soft cold air brushing against your face, you might feel your mind settling into a slower, calmer rhythm, just like the travelers who once trusted these frozen highways. The surface of a frozen river was more than just ice. It was a reflection of pale sky, a shimmering ribbon stretching into the distance. The ice carried soft patterns, thin lines formed by freezing currents, faint cracks caused by the shifting water beneath, and delicate frosty textures that sparkled under even the dimmest daylight. Travelers learned to read these patterns the same way they read snow and wind, quietly assessing whether the ice was thick enough to support them. Here's a gentle reminder to adjust your posture if you feel the need. Let your shoulders rest and your breathing ease. Just as the travelers approached frozen rivers with cautious calm, you can approach this moment with quiet relaxation, moving at your own steady pace. When the ice was thick and stable, travelers walked across it with a sense of relief. Frozen rivers offered smoother travel than uneven land, allowing groups to cover long distances without sinking into snow. The ice didn't pull at their feet, it supported them, spreading their weight gently across its surface. Imagine gliding across such a calm, flat path, where each step feels effortless and unhurried. The rivers also served as natural guides. Even under thick layers of ice, their curves and bends shaped the terrain. Ancient groups followed these winding routes not because they understood the water beneath, but because the frozen shapes helped them avoid dangerous cliffs, dense forests, or unpredictable snowdrifts. A frozen river was a quiet ally in an enormous world of white. Sometimes, faint cracks echoed beneath the surface, not warnings, but natural expressions of shifting ice. These sounds were familiar to the travelers. They paused, listened, and continued when the land felt safe again. The gentle cracks blended with the soft wind, creating a slow, rhythmic soundscape. As you imagine these echoes, let any lingering tension drift away from your thoughts. On cold mornings, the ice gleamed with a thin coat of frost, making each step glide a little more smoothly. This frost felt crisp underfoot, like stepping across delicate crystals. The world around the river remained quiet, muted by the still air and the vastness of frozen land. You might picture yourself walking beside these travelers, feeling the same peaceful steadiness in your movements. Here's another reminder to relax your hands and jaw. Let your breath soften again. The travelers didn't rush across these frozen highways. They moved with deliberate calm, trusting the signs of the land and the guidance of the one who created it. Sometimes snow collected lightly on the surface of the ice, creating a thin path of pale powder. Walking along this dusting felt almost like floating. The snow cushioned each step while still preserving the smooth clarity of the river beneath. Travelers followed these gentle snow trails for hours, their footprints forming a delicate line behind them. Along the edges of the river, tall reeds or frozen shrubs occasionally protruded from the snow. These simple plants offered clues, where the river narrowed, where it widened, and where safe exit points might be found. Travelers read the positions of these plants as naturally as one might read street signs today. As midday light spread across the land, the ice reflected it softly, never harshly. Even on bright days, the glow remained muted, creating a peaceful shimmer that seemed to follow each step. This reflection lit their path just enough, offering clarity without overwhelming the senses. Let that gentle light fill your imagination now, lifting your thoughts lightly without stirring them too much. In some areas, the river twisted through deeper valleys, where the wind passed more slowly. Here, walking felt sheltered and nearly silent. Footsteps echoed faintly, softened by walls of snow and ice. These sections of the journey felt especially calm, a place where travelers could breathe a little deeper before continuing onward. Here is another moment to let your body ease into stillness. Adjust your blanket if you like. Let your breathing follow the natural rhythm of a slow walk across a frozen river, unhurried and steady. Farther along, patches of the river revealed subtle ridges where the ice had expanded and contracted over time. These ridges weren't dangerous, but they asked for careful footing. Travelers stepped over them gently, balancing themselves with patient ease. Their movements remained calm even when the terrain shifted beneath them. And as the path continued forward, the frozen river stretched like a quiet ribbon into the vast distance, an ancient guiding line leading travelers through the cold, offering them a smooth passageway in a world otherwise shaped by snow and silence. As travelers pressed farther along the icy path, they often encountered stretches where the river widened into calm, frozen lakes. These open expanses felt different, broader, quieter, and more exposed to the sky above. The ice here carried a soft, glassy sheen, reflecting muted colors from the pale horizon. Travelers moved gently across these wide surfaces, spreading out slightly to test the ice, each step creating a faint whisper beneath their feet. Imagine yourself gliding across such a silent plain, the world around you spacious and serene. Near the edges of these frozen lakes, the snow deepened again, creating soft white borders that showed where the land resumed its shape. The travelers used these edges to rest briefly, checking their supplies or simply breathing in the cold, clean air. The silence in these moments felt almost protective, an invitation to pause, observe, and continue without tension. If you need to shift your position a little, consider this your small reminder to settle comfortably, just as they did. Sometimes the frozen rivers formed natural intersections, places where smaller streams branched off into hidden valleys or curved around gentle slopes. Travelers studied these forks carefully. A narrow stream might offer shelter from wind, while a broader one provided faster travel. They chose their paths based not on speed, but on what felt safest and most stable. Their choices were slow, thoughtful, shaped by patience rather than pressure. Imagine approaching such a fork, feeling the calm confidence of deciding with ease, not urgency. When winds picked up, they often swept thin layers of snow across the icy surface, creating flowing patterns that drifted like soft white veils. These patterns shifted with every gust, forming delicate lines that moved in harmony with the landscape. Travelers knew that gentle snow drifting meant stable weather, while heavy gusts signaled a need for caution. Still, even in wind, the frozen rivers remained quiet companions, offering long pathways when other routes grew difficult. As daylight faded, the ice transformed under the dimming sky. Colors deepened into pale blues and faint silvers, and the surface gained a calm glow that seemed to guide each step. Travelers moved closer together in these hours, their quiet voices blending softly with the whisper of wind. The evening journey across frozen rivers carried its own tranquility, steady, rhythmic, almost dreamlike. Allow a bit of that tranquility to settle into your thoughts now. Sometimes during twilight, distant cracks echoed across the river, natural sounds caused by shifting temperatures. These echoes spread gently through the air, not as warnings, but as reminders that the ice was alive in its own slow rhythm. Travelers listened, paused if needed, then continued when everything felt steady again. Their trust in the land came from understanding, not force. In the same way, you can trust the calm settling into your mind without needing to control it. When the first stars appeared, their faint reflections shimmered across the ice, forming soft patterns of light. These tiny reflections guided travelers towards safe resting places along the riverbanks. They followed the dim glow, moving carefully until they reached solid ground where they could stop for the night. The frozen highway had carried them far, offering guidance, silence, and gentle direction. Near the river's edge, the snow became thicker again, cushioning their steps as they left the icy path behind. The transition from smooth ice to soft snow marked the end of the day's travel, like stepping from one quiet dream into another. The group began to set up simple shelters, warming themselves with the fire whose comfort was granted by the will of Allah, the one who provides every means of relief. As the fire crackled gently, the frozen river lay behind them, stretching into the dark like a glimmering thread across the land. They remembered its guidance with gratitude, how it smoothed their path, widened their view, and led them safely across the frozen world. And as the night deepened, the river grew still under the star-filled sky, holding the quiet stories of countless travelers who had walked its surface with patience and calm. In imagining this final scene, allow your thoughts to drift just as softly, slowing, settling, preparing for whatever peaceful moment comes next. At this point in the journey, imagine the travelers preparing to move again across the frozen world, but this time, not by carrying everything on their backs. Instead, they turned to simple sleds, crafted with care, shaped from wood and sturdy branches. These sleds weren't elaborate inventions. They were quiet companions that slid across the snow with gentle ease, helping families transport their supplies from one shelter to the next. As you picture these sleds resting on the frost, you might feel a similar sense of lightness settling into your thoughts, like a small burden being lifted. The sleds glided across the snow with a soft, almost soothing sound, a gentle whisper of wood meeting ice. Travelers often tied ropes made from tough animal hide to the front, pulling the sleds behind them. The weight of tools, hides, food, and simple belongings distributed across the sled allowed the group to conserve their energy. Instead of sinking deep into the snow, the sled skimmed across the surface, reducing strain and helping them travel farther. Imagine that steady glide, unhurried and calm. When the snow thickened, the sleds rested lightly on top of it, supported by the cold but firm layers beneath. Travelers walked ahead with small, measured steps, ensuring the path remained smooth and safe. The sleds followed quietly, leaving long, shallow tracks behind them. These tracks formed graceful patterns, parallel lines stretching peacefully across the white landscape. Here's a gentle reminder to adjust your breathing, letting it follow that same soft rhythm the sleds created. Inside the sleds, items were arranged thoughtfully. Heavier essentials sat low and centered, while softer materials, like hides or blankets, lined the edges. This prevented tipping and kept everything stable during the journey. The organization wasn't complicated, just practical and patient. Travelers learned through experience how to balance weight so the sleds moved without strain. Picture yourself arranging your own thoughts in the same calm, orderly way, letting them settle where they feel balanced. Sometimes the sleds were pulled by a single person, especially across flat terrain. Other times, 2 or 3 travelers shared the task, each stepping in harmony with the others. Their movements were synchronized not through strict coordination, but through natural rhythm, step, pull, breathe. This steady teamwork helped preserve strength across long days of travel. The simplicity of it brought comfort, a reminder that even the hardest journeys could be softened by shared effort. The materials used to build these sleds were gathered carefully. Wood from fallen trees, smoothed by weather and time, became the frame. Strong branches formed crosspieces. Leather strips tied everything securely. The process wasn't rushed. It required patience and steady hands. Travelers understood that the usefulness of the sled came not from perfection, but from thoughtful construction. Let that idea wrap gently around your mind. That slow, careful effort often leads to the most reliable results. As the travelers continued moving, the sleds made everything feel more manageable. Instead of carrying heavy loads, they walked with freer steps, saving energy for later challenges. Their pace remained slow, calm, deliberate, never hurried. The snow underfoot cushioned each step, while the sleds glided behind them like silent shadows. Imagine walking beside them now, feeling the same effortless flow beneath your feet. Here's another soft reminder to relax your shoulders and let any tightness melt away. The travelers found small relief through these simple tools, and you can find your own relief by allowing your breath to deepen gently. During quieter moments, the group sometimes paused to check the sleds, tightening knots, brushing off snow, or redistributing weight. These breaks were calm and quiet, giving them a chance to reflect on the land around them. The creak of wood, the crisp sound of snow shifting beneath their boots, the distant hush of wind, all of it blended into a peaceful backdrop. On days when the snow grew uneven or the terrain sloped upward, the sleds required more effort. Travelers leaned forward, pulling together with steady strength. Their footsteps grew shorter, their breathing deeper, but still, their pace never lost its calm. There was no rush, only persistence. This patience mirrored the landscape itself, slow, steady, unchanging. When descending gentle slopes, the sled sometimes slid ahead slightly, prompting travelers to guide them with careful hands. These small moments brought a bit of lightness, even quiet amusement, as the sleds moved with a mind of their own. Still, the group remained composed, keeping the movement steady, never allowing the descent to become too fast. Balance was everything. As afternoon sunlight spread across the land, the sled tracks sparkled faintly, catching the light. These long lines across the snow marked the path they had taken, simple, delicate trails that stretched behind them like a soft memory of the day's progress. In your own mind, you can imagine those glowing tracks stretching calmly into the distance. Sometimes the sleds carried more than belongings. They carried memories, objects passed down through families, tools shaped long ago, hides preserved from past seasons. These items weren't symbols of luxury, but reminders of continuity, of the lessons and efforts of those who came before. Travelers treated them with care, understanding their value came from the purpose they served and the stories they held. As the group moved farther into the cold, the landscape surrounding them remained wide and quiet. The sleds continued to follow effortlessly, allowing the travelers to conserve their strength. Each step felt purposeful, each pull steady. The land responded gently, supporting the sleds, carrying them forward with subtle ease. Imagine yourself being carried forward in the same way, supported, guided, unhurried. And as we near the end of this part, picture the travelers pausing again, the sled resting softly on the snow behind them. In the stillness, the world feels open and calm, waiting patiently for the next steps. Just as they take a moment to breathe, you can let this moment sink deeply into your thoughts, soft and quiet. As the travelers continued deeper into the frozen landscape, their sleds moved steadily behind them, leaving long parallel lines etched across the snow. These lines weren't just marks, they were quiet signatures of their journey. With every hour, the sleds grew more important, helping the group save strength for colder nights or long crossings ahead. And as those lines stretched farther behind them, the world felt broader, calmer, and more open. You might imagine those same lines helping your thoughts stretch out gently, easing into stillness. Sometimes the terrain changed unexpectedly. The snow might stiffen, forming a thin crust that cracked softly underfoot. The sleds adapted easily, gliding across the hardened surface with gentle resistance. Travelers listened closely to the subtle crunches, using the sounds to understand the firmness of the ground. These small cues helped them decide when to slow down, when to press forward, and when to rest. Imagine yourself listening to such soft sounds now, simple, steady, soothing. Along certain stretches, the wind shaped the snow into low, wave-like ridges. These ridges required careful navigation. Travelers lifted the front of each sled slightly, guiding it over the uneven surface. The movement was slow but graceful, like threading a needle through soft fabric. No frustration, no hurry, only calm, practiced effort learned from many winters. Just as they adjusted their movements, you can gently adjust your breathing, letting it find an easy, natural pace. When they reached more open ground again, the sleds resumed their smooth glide, almost as if they had been waiting for the snow to soften once more. Travelers walked with renewed ease, their steps long and even. The rhythmic pull of the sled seemed to settle into their bodies, becoming part of their natural movement. This rhythm is something you can imagine settling into your own thoughts. Slow, familiar, comforting. Occasionally, the group approached icy patches where the snow had melted slightly, then refrozen. Here, The sleds glided faster, prompting the travelers to steady them with both hands. These sections felt almost effortless, but they required attention. The travelers listened for the subtle change in sound, the smooth, whispering glide of the runners on ice. These gentle cues allowed them to stay balanced and safe. Let that same sense of gentle awareness guide your breathing now. During harsh winds, the sleds became refuges for their belongings. Travelers shielded items with hides, tightening straps to protect them from blowing snow. The task wasn't stressful. It was simply careful, respectful attention. They worked without rushing, trusting that steady movements would carry them through. This kind of patient preparation reflected their understanding of the world around them, shaped by the wisdom granted by Allah. At times, the sleds were pulled by multiple people when the terrain grew steep or the snow deeper. The helpers didn't speak much. They simply matched each other's pace through small cues, a shift of weight, a slower breath, a firmer pull. Their unity made difficult stretches manageable. Imagine that same sense of shared strength easing into your mind, reminding you that even in tough moments, steady cooperation brings calm. When the sun lowered and shadows stretched across the world, the sled tracks darkened slightly, creating two soft lines that guided the group forward. These long shadows helped them choose where to travel next and where the ground might be uneven. The light didn't rush them. It simply rested gently on the ice and snow, clarifying their path. You might imagine this quiet light resting on your thoughts too, softening them into calm shapes. As the day cooled, frost formed across the sleds, coating the wooden frames in a delicate shimmer. Travelers brushed off the frost with gloved hands, appreciating its beauty without losing focus. Each small detail of the sled, the grain of the wood, the texture of the leather ties, felt more pronounced in the fading light. These simple moments of awareness helped ground them in the present. And you, too, can let small details around you ground your mind gently. When the terrain finally leveled out and the snow grew deeper again, the travelers resumed their slow and steady walk. The sleds followed quietly, never demanding attention, simply doing their work. These moments, when everything felt balanced, the terrain, the weather, the pace, offered a sense of peace that settled into their bodies like warmth from a nearby fire. Imagine that same calming warmth settling into your chest. In the last stretch before evening, the sleds moved with ease, gliding over snow that had been gently packed by the day's wind. The group's footsteps softened. Their breaths slowed. The world around them dimmed into a peaceful blue-gray. As the travelers prepared to stop, the sleds came to rest beside them, their runners settling into the snow with a soft, satisfying stillness. By the time they built their small shelters, the sled tracks behind them were already softening as drifting snow began to fill them. These fading tracks showed only that progress had been made, not rushed, not forced, just steady movement through a patient world. And as the snow continued to smooth the traces of their journey, you might imagine your own thoughts softening too, becoming lighter and quieter. As night deepened, the sled sat silently near the resting travelers, their wooden frames holding stories of the day's calm persistence. They weren't grand creations, just simple tools that help shape survival through patience and cooperation. And as we close this segment, imagine resting beside them, listening to the quiet world settling around you, feeling your breath fall into the same gentle rhythm. When ancient travelers stepped into new regions of the frozen world, they often relied on a simple, steady guide, the movements of the herds. These animals, large, resilient, and familiar with the land, walked paths shaped by instinct and survival, and humans quietly followed. Imagine watching distant silhouettes move slowly across a snowy plain, their footprints forming long, dark lines in the white landscape. As you picture this, you might feel a soft calm settle into your chest, just as the travelers felt reassured seeing the herds ahead. The herds traveled with a rhythm that matched the seasons. They moved to where food could still be found beneath layers of snow, shifting from valley to valley, or toward plains where wind swept snow thin. The travelers observed these movements carefully. They didn't chase the animals. They followed at a respectful distance, understanding that where the herds could survive, they likely could too. This patient following created a gentle pace, allowing everyone to conserve their strength during long journeys. Here's a soft reminder to adjust your breathing if needed. Let it flow naturally, like the slow, steady movements of the herds across the frozen world. These early travelers mirrored that calm rhythm, walking step by step without rushing. In the early light of morning, the herds often created soft clouds of breath that rose into the cold air, drifting in pale streams. These clouds acted as distant signals, showing travelers the direction of movement even before the animals themselves came into view. Imagine standing in that quiet morning light, watching these faint signs in the distance, subtle, gentle, unhurried. Sometimes the herds crossed frozen rivers, their hooves tapping lightly against the ice. The sound echoed faintly across the plains, reaching the travelers long before they arrived at the crossing. Those echoes helped them understand how far away the herds were, whether they were slowing or speeding up, and which direction they followed. Travelers listened carefully, letting the land guide them through sound. These echoes weren't urgent. They were peaceful cues blending into the calm atmosphere. On days when snowfall thickened, the herds moved more slowly, their shapes blending softly with the white surroundings. Travelers followed their faint outlines, using the herd's sturdy forms as gentle landmarks pointing the way forward. The softness of the snowfall muffled every sound, wrapping the world in a peaceful hush. Picture yourself walking in that quiet, the snow falling gently around you, each step carrying you deeper into calmness. At times, the herds gathered near patches of exposed grass, rare moments of green or brown peeking through the snow. These small pockets of life guided the travelers to places where they could also find shelter or rest. The land, shaped by the will of Allah, provided these opportunities, and the herds revealed them simply by stopping. The travelers understood these pauses as signs of safety, not coincidence. As the day warmed slightly, the herds often shifted direction, angling towards slopes that offered protection from the wind. Travelers read these turns clearly, adjusting their path with ease. They trusted the herds to sense safe terrain instinctively. Following them wasn't dependence, it was cooperation, a quiet agreement between humans and nature. Let that sense of mutual harmony ease your thoughts, giving you space to breathe softly. When the group approached the tracks left by the herds, they found deep, firm impressions pressed into the snow. These tracks made the path easier to walk, helping travelers avoid sinking into soft drifts. Step by step, they followed these ready-made trails, saving energy with each footfall. Imagine walking in those same tracks now, feeling supported by the steady rhythm beneath you. Here's a gentle reminder to relax any tension in your shoulders or hands. Let your body mirror the slow and steady movements of those who once followed the herds across frozen plains. Sometimes the herds paused on high ground, scanning the land for threats or changes in weather. Travelers mirrored this behavior, stopping to observe the horizon. These pauses created moments of quiet awareness, silence stretching out across the plains, broken only by the soft movements of animals breathing in the cold air. In that stillness, the world felt almost timeless. In the late afternoon, shadows cast by the herds grew long and stretched across the snow, creating soft patterns behind them. These shadows guided the travelers as much as the animals themselves, showing where the land dipped or rose. Even the way shadows bent across the ground gave clues about the terrain. The travelers moved slowly, guided not only by the animals but by the shape of the world around them. As the sun dipped lower, the herd's pace slowed. They grew calm, seeking areas sheltered from the evening wind. Travelers understood this rhythm. Following the herds meant following peace. Evening was a time of rest, not movement. In your mind, you can imagine this same slow descent into stillness, like a soft blanket settling over the world. When the herds finally stopped for the night, the travelers paused as well. They found a safe distance, sheltered their belongings, and prepared for rest. The herd's presence brought reassurance. Where these animals rested, danger rarely followed. As the last light faded, both animals and humans settled into quiet, breathing gently under the cold night sky. And as the stars appeared, the herds became faint silhouettes against the dim landscape, a calm reminder that movement would continue again tomorrow. For now, everything rested. The cold world grew still, and the travelers felt the quiet guidance of the land settle softly into them, preparing them for whatever came next. When morning returned, the herd stirred with slow, deliberate movement, their large forms shifting softly in the pale light. Frost clung to their backs, catching the first hints of sunrise. Travelers watched these early motions with quiet attention. The herd's awakening served as a natural signal that the day's journey would begin soon. In this gentle scene, nothing rushed. Everything rose calmly. As you imagine this morning glow, you might feel your own thoughts rising softly, steady and unforced. The herds began to walk, forming long lines that stretched across the plain. Their hooves pressed deep into the snow, creating firm tracks the travelers gladly followed. The rhythm of these steps, heavy but steady, guided the pace of the entire group. Travelers matched their movements with ease, knowing that following this natural rhythm made the long distances less tiring. Picture this slow alignment, step by step, like a quiet harmony between humans and the world around them. As the day brightened, the herds approached areas where wind had swept the snow thin, revealing patches of frozen earth. These open spaces made traveling smoother. The herd's movements remained calm, their silhouettes shifting steadily across the frozen ground. Travelers observed carefully, using the herds as gentle indicators of stable terrain. Here's a soft reminder to relax your jaw and neck, allowing yourself to follow this same slow and steady flow. Sometimes, the herd split briefly, some moving towards slightly higher ground, others staying on level plains. These shifts weren't chaotic. They were natural responses to the land's shape. Travelers used these moments to choose the best route. A higher path meant clearer views. A lower path meant easier walking. The choices were thoughtful, never rushed. Imagine yourself choosing paths in the same way, calmly, without pressure, guided by gentle clarity. When crossing through shallow valleys, the herds moved cautiously, their ears turning toward the wind, their bodies angled with instinctive awareness. Travelers mirrored this attentiveness. They felt the wind pass over ridges, listened for the faint echoes of movement, and followed the herd's subtle cues to avoid unstable snow. These valleys felt sheltered, quiet, like natural corridors carved through the cold world. Let that sense of sheltered calm settle into your breathing. Occasionally, the herds gathered around frozen streams, breaking thin layers of ice to reach the water beneath. The soft crack of splitting ice echoed across the plains, guiding the travelers to these rare water sources. These sounds were gentle reminders of life beneath the frozen surface, provisions placed by Allah within the land. Travelers approached respectfully, waiting their turn after the animals had finished. The scene was peaceful, unhurried, shaped by quiet cooperation. As afternoon passed, the herds continued onward, their steady pace creating a natural timeline for the day. The travelers benefited from following such predictable movement. The journey felt less like wandering and more like being guided through a world that revealed its path little by little. Imagine your thoughts following such a path, clear enough to stay steady, soft enough to stay calm. Shadows lengthened across the snow as the sun moved lower. The herd's long silhouettes stretched behind them, creating dark shapes that pointed across the landscape. These shadows acted as spaces, helping travelers judge distance and terrain even as light faded. The world dimmed gently, not abruptly, giving everyone time to slow their steps. You might let this gradual dimming quiet your mind in the same slow way. When a chillier wind arrived, the herds angled themselves toward natural walls of snow or small clusters of frozen shrubs. These natural barriers softened the wind's bite, offering temporary refuge. Travelers understood these choices well. They followed the herds into these sheltered spots, resting briefly in the calm air. Their breaths rose softly into the cold, becoming part of the stillness. Another reminder here to ease your posture. Let any stiffness drift out of you, the way wind drifts across a quiet plain. There's no urgency, only calm. As evening neared, the herd slowed almost instinctively. Their heavy steps softened, and they began searching for safe resting ground, usually on gently elevated land where visibility remained clear. The travelers recognized this behavior as a signal to stop as well. They prepared to camp at a respectful distance, feeling protected by the presence of the animals nearby. When the light dimmed to a soft bluish gray, the herds finally stopped completely. Some lay down, others stood still, conserving warmth. Travelers settled in as well, placing their belongings, arranging shelters, and preparing for night. The world grew incredibly quiet, the kind of quiet that encourages deep breaths and heavier eyelids. As stars appeared above, the silhouettes of the herds formed soft shapes against the faint horizon. These shapes brought comfort. They reminded the travelers that tomorrow's path was already chosen, not through force, but through the natural order of the land. Following the herds meant following steadiness, not chaos. And as night deepened, the calm thickened across the plain. The herds rested. The travelers rested. And the frozen world, vast and patient, settled into silence once again. Let this quiet scene wrap around your thoughts gently, preparing you for the next calm chapter. When evening crept across the frozen landscape, ancient travelers began searching for a place to rest, a quiet corner of the world where wind softened and snow gathered gently instead of drifting wildly. These places weren't built structures or grand shelters. They were simple spaces shaped by the land itself. As you imagine them looking for that spot, you might feel your own thoughts slowing, like stepping into a calm room where everything is soft and unhurried. Sometimes the group found natural dips in the ground, shallow hollows where the wind passed overhead instead of sweeping across the earth. These hollows weren't perfectly smooth, but they offered protection, a small shield from a night air. Travelers would clear the snow gently, packing it with steady hands to create a flat place to rest. Their movements were quiet, almost rhythmic: brush, press, breathe. You can imagine this same quiet rhythm settling into your own breathing. Once the ground was prepared, the travelers began arranging simple materials they carried: stiff branches, layers of hides, and small bones that served as supportive frames. They built low structures, just high enough to sit or lie within. These weren't homes. They were temporary nests, small peaceful pockets against the vast cold. And as they constructed them, their focus stayed calm, unhurried, trusting the land and the strength granted by Allah to guide their hands. Here's a gentle reminder to adjust your posture if you need it. Let your shoulders fall softly, let your breath smooth out. This moment, like the shelters, is meant to hold you quietly. The hides used for these shelters were stretched carefully across wooden frames, creating a barrier against the wind. The materials carried the faint memory of past seasons: warmth, usefulness, survival. Travelers treated them with respect, laying them out evenly, tying them with patient knots. Each knot was a reminder that simple preparation could make even the coldest nights gentle enough to endure. Imagine tying those knots yourself, slowly, without rush. Inside the shelters, travelers placed firmer materials near the edges and softer ones at the center. These layers worked together to trap warmth, allowing the group to rest comfortably through the night. Even in the harshest months, these simple shelters held enough heat to calm tired muscles and steady breathing. Picture yourself settling into such a warm space, wrapped in layers that protect without weighing you down. Around the shelters, the group arranged small barriers of snow, low walls shaped by hand. These snow walls redirected gusts of wind, creating a quiet bubble of stillness. Snow, though cold to touch, became a useful tool through the ability granted by Allah, a material that could soften sound, hold shape, and provide protection. These gentle mounds made the environment feel more peaceful, like a soft boundary around their temporary home. If your eyelids feel heavier, allow them. This is a story meant to help you drift slowly, just like the travelers sinking into their shelters for the night. After preparing the space, they gathered dry materials collected earlier to create a small fire. The warmth didn't spread far, but it touched the air with a soft glow and crackling sound. The fire's purpose wasn't to heat the entire camp. It was to provide comfort, to warm hands, to soften the cold that clung to clothing. You might imagine that gentle warmth now, as if a quiet ember glows near you. The fire also helped melt bits of snow for water, a simple but essential task. Travelers leaned in close, working slowly, careful not to let the cold steal too much heat. These small tasks felt grounding, giving purpose to the quiet hours of evening. Nothing was rushed. Every action was steady, deliberate, meaningful. Inside the shelters, The air grew warmer as the hides absorbed the heat from the bodies resting within. Breath created faint curls of mist, which faded quickly in the enclosed space. Sounds softened to a peaceful hush, fabric shifting, soft murmurs, occasional cracks from the dying fire outside. Together, these sounds formed a gentle lullaby shaped by the night. The world outside remained vast and cold, but inside the shelters, calmness wrapped around everyone like a soft, steady blanket. Travelers placed their tools within reach, arranged their supplies, and settled onto their makeshift bedding. They released the tension of the day, letting it melt quietly into the stillness around them. Another small reminder to release any tension from your hands or jaw. Let your breath deepen slightly. This moment is your own quiet shelter in the middle of the day or night. As the wind softened, the shelters creaked faintly, gentle sounds that signaled stability, not danger. These noises became familiar companions during long journeys. They reminded travelers that even in the harshest environments, there were places of safety, carved out by effort and guided by trust. And as they finally rested, the land around them calmed too. Snow settled quietly. The wind withdrew into distant valleys. Stars shimmered faintly above. In these moments, the shelters felt like small islands of warmth in a vast ocean of cold, carrying the travelers until morning returned. When the night deepened, the shelters glowed faintly from within, lit only by the soft warmth of resting bodies. Outside, the frozen world stretched into darkness, but inside, everything felt contained and gentle. Travelers lay close together, sharing heat, listening to the subtle quiet that came with exhaustion. The cold no longer pressed sharply against them. It softened, settling into a bearable hush. Imagine yourself in such a space, where every sound feels distant, softened, as if wrapped in layers of calm. As the hours passed, snow sometimes drifted lightly against the sides of the shelters, forming a natural insulation. The weight was delicate, barely noticeable, but it added another layer of protection from the wind. Travelers could hear the soft pattering of snowflakes landing above them, a peaceful, rhythmic sound that lulled them deeper into rest. That same rhythm can guide your breathing now, steady, gentle, unforced. The fire outside eventually dimmed into glowing embers, casting faint pulses of orange against the snow. Travelers checked it minimally, letting it burn low but steady. They relied on their shelters more than the flames, knowing the fire's warmth was limited. The embers became small companions through the night, a reminder of effort, preparation, and the means of comfort granted by Allah. Even a little glow created reassurance in the vast dark. Inside, the shelters grew warmer from shared body heat. The hides above them trapped warmth while letting tiny wisps of breath escape, preventing condensation from freezing overhead. These shelters weren't perfect, but they were intentionally simple, effective through patience and practice rather than complexity. Travelers trusted in their construction, knowing each crease and knot had been shaped with care. Here's a gentle reminder to ease any tension near your neck or shoulders. Let the calm of this imagined shelter spread slowly outward, the way warmth spreads inside those simple structures at night. Sometimes the wind returned for a moment, brushing the shelters with soft, low groans. The sounds were not frightening, they were expected. Travelers listened, recognized the direction, and relaxed again. The shelters held firm, shifting slightly but never giving way. These small creaks became familiar, like the settling of a quiet home during winter. Above them, the sky stretched clear and full of faint stars. Though hidden beneath hides and snow, the travelers sensed the openness above, the vastness of the world that watched over them. They didn't see those stars directly, but they felt the quiet stability of the night. In your own thoughts, imagine that calm expanse overhead, wide and patient. Every so often, someone adjusted a blanket, shifted their weight, or whispered softly to another. These tiny movements echoed quietly through the shelter, blending into the night's rhythm. Nothing sharp, nothing sudden, just the gentle sounds of people resting after a long day. You might let your own breathing join that rhythm now. Outside, the snow slowly buried the day's footprints and sled marks, smoothing the world into a quiet, untouched surface. The land refreshed itself, erasing traces of movement with soft, deliberate calm. Travelers knew that by morning, their path would appear new again. This nightly renewal was a reminder that each day brought fresh steps, fresh chances, and guidance shaped by the will of Allah. Inside the shelters, peace grew deeper. Muscles relaxed. Thoughts quieted. The weight of the day faded into a soft blur. Travelers drifted towards sleep in steady waves, guided not by comfort alone but by trust. Trust in their shelter, trust in their group, trust in the land's patterns, trust in the one who allowed their survival. Another reminder, let your own thoughts settle just as slowly. Breathe deeply. Let warmth gather quietly in your chest. As the final hours of night approached, the world remained still. Not silent in emptiness, but silent with purpose, a silence shaped by snow, wind, and the wide, resting land. Inside the shelters, the calm was complete. By the time dawn's earliest light pressed against the horizon, the shelters stood like small islands of warmth in a sea of pale blue. Their walls glistened lightly with frost, their footprints softened into gentle depressions. The travelers slept deeply, wrapped in layers of quiet protection. And as this segment closes, imagine yourself resting with them, breathing gently, surrounded by calm, held by a shelter built with care. In this moment, nothing rushes you. Nothing demands from you. Everything simply waits in quiet readiness for the next soft chapter. Crossing the vast plains of snow was one kind of challenge, but sooner or later, ancient travelers reached the rising edges of the land, low mountains and long glacial valleys shaped by thousands of cold seasons. These slopes didn't tower sharply. They rose quietly, covered in a thick blanket of white. As the group approached these heights, the world seemed to grow even quieter, the air finer, the sound softer. And as you imagine stepping onto the base of a snowy ridge, you might feel your thoughts slow the same way, like the first gentle climb of a calm ascent. The travelers studied each slope before moving upward. They looked for areas where the snow was packed tighter, avoiding places where it drifted into soft, deep pockets. Their eyes followed the natural lines of the mountain, ridges formed by wind, grooves carved by previous winters. These shapes acted as pathways. Nothing was forced. They climbed where the land invited them, never where it resisted. Imagine reading your own path in life with that same patient clarity. Here's a soft reminder to relax your shoulders, letting them settle as if you, too, are preparing for a slow, steady climb. As they stepped upward, the snow changed beneath their feet, growing firmer and more structured. Every sound became clearer, the crunch of boots, the faint whisper of snow-brushing clothing, the rhythmic breathing that rose like soft fog in the cold air. The slope was not steep, but long, requiring steady patience. Travelers didn't power their way up. They paced themselves, trusting the strength Allah provided with every careful step. When they reached higher ground, the view opened into wide glacial valleys carved by ice long ago. These valleys felt like enormous white corridors, stretching between walls of frozen stone and snow. The wind moved differently here, slower, swirling gently instead of pushing harshly. The travelers paused often, studying how snow was shaped by the wind to understand which paths were safest. These quiet pauses were as important as the movement itself. Sometimes faint cracks echoed through the valley, caused by layers of ice shifting deep beneath the snow. These echoes weren't threats. They were simply reminders of the land's breath, its slow changes through the cold. Travelers listened carefully, letting the sound guide their awareness without fear. You can imagine those echoes now, distant and soft, helping your own thoughts drift into calmer places. At times, the valley floor dipped slightly, forming long, smooth curves. These dips collected snow that had been blown down from the surrounding slopes, forming gentle waves of white. Travelers moved slowly through these areas, testing the depth with sticks or careful steps. Their progress remained calm and deliberate, never rushed, always respectful of the land's quiet signals. Here's another gentle reminder to breathe slowly. Just as the travelers conserved energy in the cold valleys, you can conserve your own attention, allowing it to move lightly, without strain. The walls of the valley often glistened with layers of wind-polished ice, catching the pale light in muted colors, soft blues, frosty silvers, faint grays. These colors shifted gradually as the sun moved across the sky, creating a peaceful glow that followed the travelers as they continued. This natural beauty didn't distract them. It encouraged them, offering quiet reassurance in the vast cold. As they moved deeper into the valleys, the wind became even quieter, creating a cocoon of stillness. Footsteps felt more pronounced, breaths more noticeable, thoughts easier to hear. This silence wasn't empty. It was comforting, a reminder that the land, though enormous, held pockets of deep peace. Imagine standing in such a place now, where the world around you softens into a gentle hush. Occasionally, the group found large boulders partially buried beneath the snow, shaped smooth by countless winters. These stones acted as markers and resting spots. Travelers stopped near them to lean, stretch, and sip melted snow warmed by the small fires they carried. These breaks helped them regain strength without hurrying, grounding them in simple routines. As daylight filtered through thin clouds, the glacial valley brightened in a soft, even glow. There were no harsh shadows, only a gentle diffusion of light that made the world feel quieter, almost suspended. The travelers continued forward, letting the calmness guide their pace. You might imagine your own thoughts becoming just as soft and evenly lit. Sometimes, the valley narrowed into winding corridors where the land rose steeply on either side. In these narrow places, the snow thickened, cushioning every sound. Travelers adjusted their steps, moving with extra care, testing the ground with each shift of weight. Their movements became slow and steady, like gliding through a silent passage carved by time. Here's one more soft reminder. Relax your hands, loosen your breathing, and allow yourself to sink a little deeper into stillness. As the travelers neared the end of the valley, the land began opening once more, revealing a wide plateau of frozen ground. The hardest part of the crossing was behind them. Ahead waited a calmer stretch, where the wind softened and the terrain eased into gentler shapes. The group stopped briefly, letting their breath steady. And as they stood there, surrounded by cold cliffs and quiet snow, the world felt balanced, difficult enough to show their strength, gentle enough to let them rest. The journey through the mountains and glacial valleys continued, slow and patient, guided by trust in the land and the one who shaped it. As the travelers stepped onto the plateau, the snow beneath them took on a slightly different texture, firmer, packed by winds that swept across the high ground. Each step produced a soft, crisp sound that echoed lightly through the open air. The horizon stretched wide in every direction, giving the group a chance to pause and observe the land ahead. This high vantage point felt calming, almost like being lifted into a quieter layer of the world. Imagine standing with them, breathing in a slow, steady rhythm, feeling the vastness settle gently around you. From this height, the travelers could see pathways carved naturally by wind and time. Snow ripples stretched across the plains, forming faint guiding lines. Sometimes these lines curved toward sheltered valleys. Other times they led along the crest of ridges that offered easier travel. The group studied these shapes carefully, understanding that the land spoke more clearly from above. This moment of observation required stillness, which allowed their minds, and yours, to sink into a peaceful clarity. As they began their descent from the plateau, the ground sloped gradually, allowing them to move with controlled ease. They leaned slightly forward, stepping gently into the snow, letting gravity assist rather than push them. Each footfall settled softly, leaving small crescent impressions behind. The wind was calmer here, brushing lightly against their clothing as if guiding them downward. Here's a gentle reminder to let your own breath follow that same downward motion, soft, slow, grounded. Midway down the slope, the travelers reached a section where hard ice peeked through the snow. These patches glimmered like polished stone, reflecting the faint light of the afternoon sky. The group slowed, testing each step, using their walking sticks to check for stability. The ice didn't frighten them. It simply required patience and careful attention. Imagine yourself approaching such a patch of ground with the same calm presence, steady and unhurried. At the base of the slope, the landscape formed a narrow valley carved by ancient glacier. The walls rose gently on both sides, curving inward like protective arms. Inside this corridor, the air became still again, and sound seemed to settle lower to the ground. Footsteps became softer, breaths more noticeable. Travelers felt the shift immediately, sensing the change in atmosphere as a welcome easing of effort. This valley offered a natural moment of rest. In the valley center, small mounds of wind-blown snow created smooth waves that looked almost sculpted. These waves were easy to walk over, guiding the travelers forward with a gentle rise and fall. Each step felt measured and comfortable, the terrain helping them conserve their energy. Imagine walking through such a place, your thoughts rising and falling in the same calm pattern. Here's another soft reminder to adjust your position. Let your back settle, let your breathing deepen, let the calm flow into you as naturally as wind flows through a quiet valley. As the travelers continued, they approached an area where the valley narrowed into a soft bottleneck. Snow collected deeply here, forming a thick cushion beneath their feet. Instead of resisting the depth, they embraced the slower pace it created. Their steps became shorter, their movements more deliberate. The deep snow muffled every sound, creating a comforting stillness, like walking through a world made of soft blankets. Once they passed the narrowest point, the valley widened again, revealing another stretch of smooth ground. From this vantage, they could see distant hills shaped by countless winters, their outlines softened by layers of frost. The group paused here, letting the quiet seep into their bones, taking in the slow, patient beauty of the frozen world. As daylight faded, the sky turned into a muted wash of blue and gray. The soft, indirect light made the entire valley glow gently, as if illuminated from beneath the snow. Travelers often found this comforting, a natural signal to slow their pace and prepare for evening. Imagine that dimming light softening your thoughts, smoothing out any edges or tension. Farther along, they encountered natural ice formations hanging from rocky ledges, thin, clear sheets shaped by melting and refreezing. These formations caught the last hints of daylight, shimmering faintly like fragile glass. The travelers admired them quietly, recognizing them as signs of the land's constant transformation, granted by the will of Allah who shapes seasons and time itself. As they approached the exit of the valley, the terrain rose slightly once more, leading them toward open plains. Their bodies moved with confident familiarity, knowing the hardest parts of the day were behind them. The air grew colder as the sun sank, but the travelers accepted this change calmly, already thinking of the shelters they would soon prepare. Here's a small reminder to loosen your breath again. Let it flow without effort, like cold air flowing through the last stretch of a peaceful valley. By the time they reached the open ground, the sky above had settled into dusk. Soft shadows stretched across the snow, blending into the vastness of the land. The travelers paused at the valley's edge, taking one final look behind them, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they had completed. And as they stepped forward into the twilight, the mountains and valleys behind them faded into gentle shapes, their echoes softened by distance. The world ahead remained open, steady, and waiting. In this calm transition, the travelers carried with them a sense of quiet strength, shaped by patience and guided by the one who oversaw every step. During long journeys across the frozen world, survival wasn't just about strength or endurance. It depended on quiet cooperation. Ancient travelers understood that moving together, listening to one another, and communicating gently could turn even the harshest landscapes into manageable paths. Imagine walking with them now, hearing only soft footsteps in the snow and the calm murmur of voices exchanged in peaceful tones. Their unity created warmth against the cold, a warmth you might feel settling slowly into your chest. Communication among the group was subtle. They didn't shout across the plains. They used soft gestures, nods, and slow hand signals that blended into the quiet of the land. A raised palm meant pause. A tilt of the head meant follow. A gentle sweep of the arm pointed towards safer ground. These silent exchanges kept the group aligned without disturbing the stillness around them. Picture these gestures like small ripples in an otherwise calm lake, gentle, steady, clear. When they needed to decide on a route, the group formed a loose circle. No one towered above the others. Decisions were shared calmly, shaped by experience and trust. Someone might kneel to draw a line in the snow, showing the direction of a frozen river or the outline of a mountain ridge. Others leaned closer, adding small marks, pointing toward landmarks. Their voices stayed low and steady, never hurried, never sharp. These gatherings felt like quiet reflections, not debates. As they moved again, cooperation guided every step. If someone walked more slowly, the group adjusted. If the wind grew too strong, they tightened their formation, creating a protective shape that shielded the younger or more tired members from the cold. These small acts were instinctive, a rhythm learned through countless journeys. Imagine that sense of gentle protection surrounding you now, steady and reassuring. Falling snow often softened visibility, blurring the horizon into pale white. During these moments, communication became even more important. The group shortened the distance between each person, walking close enough that each could see the shape of the one in front. Their footsteps aligned naturally, forming a smooth, quiet line across the snow. This closeness created comfort, a feeling of safety in an otherwise featureless world. Sometimes the group had to cross icy paths where the ground felt uncertain. In these moments, the front traveler tapped the surface with a walking stick, listening for the firm or hollow sound that came in response. With a simple nod or gesture, they signaled the others to follow or choose another route. These sound-based conversations, soft and brief, carried more meaning than long discussions could. Another gentle reminder: loosen your hands and let your breath fall into a soft, rhythmic flow. The early travelers thrived on slow harmony, and you can borrow a piece of that calm now. When someone stumbled, the nearest traveler reached out instantly, not with urgency, but with calm steadiness. A supportive arm, a quiet hold, a shared balance. These small interactions strengthened the group's trust in one another. Even in silence, the reassurance was clear. No one crossed the frozen world alone. In deeper snow, teamwork became essential. Travelers rotated positions, allowing the strongest to break the first steps while others followed in the freshly pressed path. This rotation saved energy and prevented exhaustion. No one carried the burden for too long. The land rewarded this cooperation by offering smoother passage through difficult terrain. Imagine this shared rhythm easing into your thoughts, effort distributed, pressure softened. During moments of rest, some gathered sticks, others checked tools, while a few watched the land for changes in the weather. No role was too small. Every quiet task contributed to the group's safety. Their cooperation was not dramatic. It was steady, thoughtful, and shaped by gratitude for the strength Allah placed within their community. When crossing frozen rivers, they held onto one another's arms lightly, forming a chain. The connection wasn't tight. It was simply enough to guide balance and offer reassurance. Each person matched their movements to the next, stepping across the ice in a soft, unified rhythm. Picture that gentle chain of support, moving across the world in peaceful harmony. Sometimes children or elders traveled with the group. They walked in the middle, protected from wind and uneven terrain. Others surrounded them naturally, creating a quiet barrier of care. The group strength wasn't in individual ability, it was in how they supported one another, step after step. As the sun lowered and the day cooled, communication moved entirely into soft gestures. A lowered hand meant slow down. A tap on the sled meant stop. A gentle touch on the arm meant look. This silent language became second nature, a flowing conversation shaped by trust and calm experience. And as they approached their resting place for the night, the entire group slowed together, almost like a single body. No commands needed, no instructions shouted, just a shared awareness that spread naturally among them. In this quiet unity, the travelers found both safety and peace. And as you picture them preparing to stop, you might feel a similar unity settling softly inside your thoughts, calm, steady, connected. As twilight gathered across the frozen land, the group's communication shifted once more into an even gentler rhythm. With daylight fading, they relied less on distant signals and more on close, careful presence. A simple tap on the shoulder, a slow nod, or the soft crunch of synchronized steps became their shared language. In this dimming world, cooperation felt natural, almost instinctive. Imagine walking beside them, sensing others not by sound alone, but by the calm steadiness of their movement. As the travelers scanned the horizon for a place to rest, their coordination became clear. One person pointed out a sheltered hollow, another signaled agreement with a slow wave, while others shifted their formation to guide the group toward it. These choices were made quietly, shaped by experience rather than urgency. No raised voices, no tension, only shared trust. Allow that image of smooth decision-making to loosen any tightness in your mind. The group gathered near a cluster of snow-covered stones, assessing the terrain with calm attentiveness. One traveler pressed a foot into the ground to test firmness, another checked for wind direction, while others looked for signs of animals. Each small action contributed to the larger decision, their efforts weaving together like threads in a quiet tapestry of survival. This harmony brought comfort, reminding them that caution didn't need to be stressful, it could be peaceful. As they settled into the area, cooperation continued seamlessly. Some began to clear a circular patch of snow for the shelters. Others prepared tools, stacked sleds, or unpacked essential supplies. Even the children, if present, helped gather bits of dry material for small fires. These shared tasks created a soft, familiar rhythm, work that felt meaningful, grounding, and calm. You can imagine yourself moving through such tasks with the same gentle confidence. The group communicated constantly, though rarely through words. A hand placed on a shoulder signaled readiness. A quiet glance conveyed understanding. A slow breath shared warmth in the cold air. These small interactions created an atmosphere where everyone felt seen and supported. It was cooperation not built on force, but on mutual respect and the strength Allah placed in their unity. During these moments, the cold world around them seemed a little less daunting. Each person contributed to the safety of the whole, and the land responded by offering its calm. Snow settling, wind softening, shadows stretching peacefully across the ground. Imagine that softness stretching into your thoughts, letting every worry settle gently. As the fire was lit, its glow became a point of connection. Travelers gathered around it, not in a tight circle, but in comfortable closeness. They shared quiet glances, soft murmurs, and slow breaths as the warmth spread across their hands. Cooperation didn't end when they stopped walking. It simply shifted into a quieter form. Fire crackling, snow drifting, breath rising, the scene blended into a peaceful rhythm. When the time came to distribute food, the group worked with the same gentle coordination. No one rushed, no one took more than they needed. They passed items quietly, making sure every member, including the youngest and the oldest, had enough. These moments of shared care were small, but they held powerful meaning. Cooperation was not an extra effort, it was their way of being. As night deepened, they checked each other's shelters, tightened coverings, and ensured that every structure was stable. A soft tug on a rope, a small adjustment of hides, a quiet nod of approval, these gestures showed their attentiveness. In the frozen world, nothing offered more comfort than knowing others were looking out for you with calm intent. Nearby, someone smoothed a patch of snow to create a walkway between shelters. Another pushed soft drifts aside to allow safer footing. These acts required little energy but carried significant warmth. They were reminders that survival wasn't only about physical endurance, it was also about quiet kindness shared within the group. As the group finally settled into their shelters, the communication did not truly stop. The soft rustle of someone adjusting their bedding, the quiet breath from another shelter, the muffled sounds of movement, all these small signals reassured everyone that the camp was alive, connected, and safe. Outside, the land listened. Snow thickened gently. Wind withdrew into distant hills. And cooperation, so steady and natural throughout the day, finally eased into a night of shared rest. And as you imagine lying among them, warmed by their unity, you might feel a similar calm togetherness settle into your heart, quiet, steady, easing you toward the next peaceful chapter of this long and gentle journey. As the long journey across the frozen world neared its final stretches, the travelers often felt a quiet sense of return, an inner pull toward places of rest, warmth, and familiarity. They didn't rush. Their steps remained slow, steady, and deliberate, but there was a softness in the way they looked ahead, as if the landscape itself whispered that home, whatever shape it took, was drawing closer. Imagine walking with them now, feeling that gentle anticipation, like approaching a warm light after a long night. The horizon began to look different as they moved. Mountains sank behind them, valleys widened, and broad plains opened once more. These changes didn't shout for attention, they unfolded gradually. Tiny hints appeared first: a familiar slope, a set of wind-shaped ridges they recognized, a frozen stream they had crossed seasons before. Each sign comforted them, subtle reminders that their long path was circling back. Let that same sense of familiar calm melt into your thoughts. Here's a soft reminder to breathe deeply, letting your inhale rise like the gentle hope of returning, and your exhale fall like snow settling into quiet patterns. As the land shifted into more recognizable shapes, the travelers adjusted their pace naturally. It wasn't excitement that hurried them, it was relief. The ground felt easier beneath their feet, as if the snow itself welcomed them back. Their sleds glided more smoothly, their steps aligned more easily, and even the cold seemed less sharp. The world felt like it was guiding them, offering a gentle hand toward the place they longed to reach. The closer they came, the more memories resurfaced, not spoken aloud, but gently held. They recalled where certain animals roamed, where winds changed direction, where snow gathered into thick drifts after storms. These memories helped them choose their path wisely. They weren't just traveling across land, they were retracing pieces of a life shaped by seasons, survival, and gratitude to Allah for guiding them through each challenge. Sometimes, they passed landmarks they themselves had created earlier in the journey, snow mounds that once sheltered them, or trails softened by recent storms. Even faint traces of old fires, now buried beneath layers of snow, stood as proof of the long road behind them. These silent reminders didn't pull them backward. They simply reassured them that they had traveled far with patience and resilience. When the sun dipped lower, casting warm glows across the snow, the travelers felt the day winding down in a familiar, comforting way. The light softened, stretching into long reflections that shimmered on frozen ground. This gentle golden tint promised rest soon, perhaps a final night before reaching a safer, more settled place. Imagine that soft glow warming your imagination, the way an evening fire warms the hands of someone returning home after a long day. The air also grew calmer. Winds that once carried sharp cold now moved more gently, brushing lightly past the travelers like a peaceful greeting. Snowflakes drifted in slow spirals, not in thick storms, but in soft patterns that floated down quietly. This change in the air felt like a blessing, subtle reassurance that the hardest parts of the journey were already behind them. Here's another reminder to adjust your posture if needed. Let your shoulders fall into ease, the way travelers loosened their tension when the land became gentler. As they walked, the group's communication grew quieter still. They didn't need many signals now. The direction was known. Their bodies remembered the land's shape. They relied on calm intuition, built over countless steps, to guide them forward. Step after step, they moved together as one, breathing more easily with each passing moment. Occasionally, they stopped at familiar spots, small dips in the ground where they once sheltered from wind, or frozen pools where they had gathered water earlier in the season. These pauses carried a sense of reassurance. They recognized the land's offerings, and in return, the land offered quiet clarity. You might imagine stopping with them, feeling the same calmness spreading through your chest. As the day slowly dimmed, travelers often caught distant sounds carried by the softening wind, a memory of streams freezing deeper, or animals settling into their resting places. These sounds reminded them of the rhythms of the land they had lived alongside for so long. Sounds that once meant caution now felt familiar, comforting, steady. Step by step, the sky shifted into gentle colors, faded purples, soft blues, muted grays. The land mirrored these tones, creating a peaceful harmony between earth and sky. Travelers walked through this dusk as if moving through a long, quiet lullaby. Each moment encouraged rest, reminding them that their journey was approaching its final stretch. Another soft reminder: let your breathing follow the quiet rhythm of this fading light. Let it wash gently across your mind. As they reached the last ridge before their destination, the land ahead appeared open and welcoming. The wind calmed further, the snow smoothed into gentle curves, and the horizon glowed softly in the fading light. The travelers paused, not to plan or decide, but simply to appreciate the quiet moment before the final steps. And as they took that moment, the world around them seemed to breathe with them, calm, steady, patient. The long pathward home was nearly complete, and the peace of returning wrapped around them like a warm blanket, guiding them gently toward the last chapter of their journey. As the travelers continued down the final slope, the world began to open into broad, gentle plains, familiar ground shaped by countless seasons. The snow here felt softer beneath their feet, as if welcoming them back with a quiet embrace. Each step carried a sense of gratitude, not for ease alone, but for the strength that had guided them through mountains, valleys, and the cold silence of the frozen world. Imagine yourself walking beside them, feeling the same subtle relief of nearing a place of rest. The sky deepened into shades of blue and lavender as dusk settled across the horizon. These muted colors wrapped the land in calm, turning every surface into a soft glow of fading light. Travelers walked slowly, not because they were tired, but because the moment called for quiet appreciation. The long journey behind them had taught patience, steadiness, and trust, qualities that felt even stronger now as they stepped toward the familiar shapes ahead. Here's a gentle reminder to breathe deeply again, letting that calm colorscape settle inside your mind the way evening settles across snow. As they moved farther, faint outlines appeared, trees they recognized, sheltered ridges they had used before, shallow plains where they once rested. These shapes brought silent reassurance, like seeing an old friend after many seasons. Their hearts didn't leap, they simply softened, warmed by the sense of return. Even the wind carried a subtle shift, brushing past them with a gentler, more familiar touch. When they reached a small rise overlooking a long stretch of frozen land, the travelers paused. They stood together quietly, letting the view settle across their minds. This pause was not about planning, it was about reflection. They had crossed great distances, faced cold mornings, long nights, shifting winds, and deep snow. And yet they remained calm, united, and guided through it all by the will of Allah, who shaped their endurance and protected their steps. In that stillness, the world felt balanced. No urgency, no lingering fear, only quiet gratitude. The snow shimmered faintly in the darkness, and the sky above looked peacefully vast. Imagine that moment of reflection now, letting your mind soften as if nothing in the world is asking anything from you. As they continued walking, the path grew more level, and the land took on a familiar rhythm. They recognized the gentle curves beneath the snow, the way the wind shaped small dunes, the sound of distant ice settling. These cues spoke to them like a soft voice saying, "You've come far. You are safe." Their breaths deepened naturally, matching the slow, steady comfort of returning. Another small reminder: feel free to let your shoulders release, your hands soften, your breath slow. You're nearing the end of this journey too. Soon, the faint glow of their destination came into view, not bright, but warm, like a memory held gently in the cold. The group slowed once more, savoring the last stretch of the pathward home. Every step felt meaningful, not because the journey was difficult, but because it had shaped them with quiet resilience. Their footsteps eventually reached the familiar ground where they would finally rest. They placed their sleds down gently, letting the runners settle into the snow. The air around them felt calm, almost still. The world no longer challenged them, it welcomed them. And in that peaceful acceptance, they felt a soft warmth settle over their hearts. As they prepared to rest, the night sky deepened into tranquil darkness. Stars shimmered faintly overhead, watching silently as the travelers settled into the familiar routines of evening. No rush, no tension, only the calm that comes when a long path draws to its close. They gathered together for a final quiet moment, acknowledging their journey not through words, but through shared presence. Their breaths drifted into the cold air in soft curls, mingling with the stillness of the land that had carried them through so much. Here's your final gentle reminder: allow your breathing to slow, your thoughts to soften, and your heart to settle into quiet ease, just as theirs did. And as the travelers finally rested, the world around them grew wonderfully hushed. The long pathward home had guided them with patience, strength, and unspoken comfort. They had reached safety, not through haste, but through steady trust and calm endurance. And now, as this segment comes to a close, take a moment to reflect softly. You've walked alongside these ancient travelers through frozen plains, quiet valleys, long rivers, and gentle slopes. You've felt their calm, their patience, their steady resilience. Thank you for listening to this peaceful journey. May the calm of this story linger with you, wrapping your thoughts in warmth and ease. And may your own path, wherever it leads, be guided with gentleness, clarity, and quiet strength.